Hey everybody, this is Perch. Before we get to this mail, there's been an uptick in the "why won't Perch just say the words" conversations. I truly don't understand why it matters to people. I get that on some kind of basic human instinct, there's a dopamine hit and trying to control somebody and get them to do what you do, and it's a control issue, but it still seems very, very pathetic. And it's one of those areas where there is a crossover to a lot of different people. In this case, the "why won't you say the words" is when I point out things around trigger warnings and so on, and I get these responses of Perch knows that it's this secret cabal of people who are trying to ruin comics for straight men, and fuck that guy. He should just say the word. It's that stuff, and it's tiresome to me. I don't know. Have you guys not had enough of this content? I mean, there's literally dozens of videos every day to scratch that itch. I don't know what you're doing over here on this channel. Like, let's see if we could get one more guy to say the words. It's just weird to me. It's just weird. Anyway, I'm not saying I don't understand it. I'm saying it's weird. Let's get to this mail. It says, comic by Perch. Readers say they want less events, but to their wallets tell the true story. It says, hello, Perch. There's been a lot of talk over the years about giving comic creators, the big two, more breathing room to tell their stories for at least a significant number of months, rather than interrupting them with various events and other multi-book initiatives too early in their run. I'm totally on board with that suggestion, personally speaking, but I've rarely seen anyone discuss what the actual numbers and sales trends start to tell us when Marvel and DC try and do something along those lines. Case in point, I was reading Tom Brevoort's Substack. He made an interesting observation about the evolution of comic sales during one period when they didn't do any big events for the main Avengers-related books, specifically during the so-called heroic age after the end of Siege. By the way, I mean, as somebody who was selling comics during that time, the end of Siege in less than a year led to that Matt Fraction event, Fear Itself. So I often think, we took a break for less than a year. I mean, sure, that's a break, I guess, but I've heard this before. Brevoort has mentioned this before of like, well, I'll read. Let me keep going to the mail. We'll come back to it. It says, mail says, let me quote, from Tom Brevoort's Substack. Our real mistake, though, was listening to all of the readers who were then complaining about event fatigue and deciding that for the first year of the heroic age, we wouldn't do any big event series. More than anything, I think it was that decision that took the wind out of our sails and allowed the competition to make up ground and reestablish themselves. We corrected thereafter. The damage had been done. That's not an accurate view of history. I mean, for what it's worth, it's not an accurate view of history. I mean, first off, the first two Bendis arcs were 6-issue arcs in each case. One was an Ultron Far Future Avengers Next thing that was going on with multiversal shenanigans, and the second was the Hood getting the Infinity Gauntlet. Yes, they were comic arcs, but be that as it may. And so, I guess technically he said, for nearly a year, for the first year, but Fear Itself came hot and heavy, and there was a lot of prep leading into it. And by the way, we could do the sales analysis and that event was a dud compared to the previous event. Siege did well. The whole Dark Reign was fire for a lot of Marvel Comics. People were really into that idea. I mean, you went off of a hot run across the comics, and comic sales went down in the heroic age. Keep in mind, in the heroic age, you also started to test the waters with alternate versions of heroes, and just like we got Bucky and his cap, and you started to mess around with that as well. So to blame that on we should have listened to the readers around events is stupid, particularly if you then fast forward to the events that would follow over the next, 5-10 years. I mean, would you like to check in on those sales of Civil War II or Empire or some of those other? Oh, but that was during COVID. Okay, fine. Look at a lot of the other events that went on during this time period, that the sales were duds when you start ramping up to 2 or 3 a year. Still didn't work. Secret Wars had big sales. Secret Empire was by and large a dud from a sales perspective. So, I mean, look, you can kind of twist this any direction you want. But that's a false read of history by the math. And in terms of DC kind of stepping up their what they were doing, I mean, yeah, but they did a line-wide initiative. Several of them, they had some hot artists and writers on the books. That's what they did. So this is all a bit phony, in my opinion. It's like if only we would have kept doing events, then New 52 wouldn't have been popular. It's like what are you talking about? Anyway, let's conclude this mail. It says, I wonder, is he right, at least for that particular situation, or perhaps he's taking the wrong lesson from that experience? So I do think he's taking the wrong lesson from that experience, and I think the numbers don't back up what he's saying. And again, it's a weird it's a weird perspective where you say we stopped doing events for almost a year, and that was a horrible decision. I think the real thing Tom wanted to say in that quote was, we shouldn't have listened to the fans. That's he likes to say that, and he likes to insert that little idea any chance he can get. We shouldn't have listened to the fans is kind of his go-to in a lot of cases, and it's really predicated on this idea of, we know what we're doing, we do everything right, and whenever you tell us you should listen to the fans, but look, here's another case where we did that and our sales went down. It's like, well, never mind the fact that you had a kind of some red hot writers and artists over in DC doing their giant line-wide event, and never mind the fact that the event that you did go to was not, people didn't give a shit about it, and never mind the fact that a lot of the things you were doing during the heroic age were modifying existing characters and doing different things with them, which readers didn't take to. So I mean, whatever. But there, to the original question, when you talk about fans voting with their wallets, there is truth. It's a wrong takeaway that Tom came up with, but there is definitely truth to fans will say they don't want events, and then they'll buy events. Now, I don't think that has anything to do with the idea of, well, this is why we should stop publishing monthly comics and everything else, because you might be shocked to learn this. When you put a hot writer and a hot artist on a title, and you have a storyline that people care about, the sales go up. It's the most amazing thing. But typically what the big two have taught people is that they'd save their kind of big writer, big artist combo for events. That if you really want to see kind of the big thing that they're doing, then it's going to be in an event. And also the event is where the big storylines happen. It's a little bit like wrestling when you look at house shows versus, Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view. Once upon a time, the big things happened on pay-per-view. And so, you knew if you went to a house show, you were not going to get a title change. You weren't going to get any of that kind of stuff. The big storyline developments are going to happen, when it was televised. And then for a period of time, the TV wars became more important than the pay-per-views. So you knew that Raw was really where the big storyline things were going to happen. The pay-per-views were less important, and the house shows were still less important. Well, comics has kind of evolved itself to that, where the big events are where the big storyline developments happen. It's where the comic company steers all of its stuff. You got the popular writers and artists on there too. It's all of those factors mean that you're basically telling your consumer base, by the events, that's the comic that matters. And you've deprioritized the monthly. And shockingly, the monthly comic gets rebooted and changed all the time. And it seems like half the time people are more interested in variant covers than the comic itself. And big shock, the sales go down of the monthly comics. I don't think that's because readers just, care about events and don't care about monthly comics. It's that you've taught them to do that. And so I think that's kind of the big factor there for everything that's going on. I don't know. Like I said, Tom's, is not wrong with the idea, except I think what he's arguing with is not about events or monthly comics. He's arguing that we shouldn't listen to fans. Again, he's done a lot of these little blogs, and that seems to be a recurring theme of really trying to prove that, hey, we know what we're doing and you don't. Tom's one of those real torchbearers for the idea of making comics is hard. We know how to do it. You don't. So therefore, stay out of our kitchen. It's that kind of stuff. So I think his logic and examples he gives are incorrect. And I think it downplays things like, hey, we're going to have, Greg Capullo over here on the Batman book with Snyder, and it's going to be a red hot run. And a lot of things were clicking for DC in that moment. But, we, as an editor, at Marvel, we have a long-standing tradition of not inflating the artists or the writers very much because, that takes control away from the company. So, we're going to kind of look past that. It's like, why did Batman sell like a beast? Well, I mean, shocking. You had probably one of the hottest artists, on one of the hottest characters with a hot writer for a period of time. What do you think is going to happen? But anyway, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.